Yeah, it's pretty tall. I'm not that tall. So I'm grateful to be here today and share with you my story, my journey. In the past, I actually did not share about my childhood, but dealing with a life-altering diagnosis in the past couple of years of multiple sclerosis, I dove a little bit deeper and had unraveled some hidden layers of shame that were just really deep down inside me. And so what I truly believe is that darkness cannot hide in the light. So here's my story. So I was raised in what was a typical 80s party house. It was cute to take a picture of your baby holding a beer, and even funnier to give your child a drink. By the age of 6, I had my first drink, and shortly after that, I would start to steal alcohol from my parents because I loved the way I felt in my body. I no longer needed to feel what was going on inside of me. And what I didn't recognize at the time was that I was too young to understand that it was fear, anxiety, and uncertainty that I lived with on a daily basis. So growing up, our family appeared normal. We had a nice house, we had a nice car. I was always dressed really well. We were involved in many sports, and I loved to figure skate. I started competing around the age of 7. So everything looked really good, but the emotional, physical, and sexual abuse that was hidden inside our home was suffocating. So at night when I went to bed, if there wasn't a party going on and my parents were not fighting, when I would finally fall asleep, I had this recurring dream that I was falling off a cliff. And every night before I'd hit the ground, I would wake up in a panic and just lay there afraid in bed until it was time to go to school. So by the age of 16, I'd experienced a lifetime of physical, emotional, and sexual abuse. I'd tried every drug available to me to numb my pain and had run away and lived on the streets several times. I was taken to a psych ward at the age of 13 after an unwanted abortion, and then shipped 3 hours away to train as a figure skater. Unfortunately, my billet family had a newborn baby, and it was just really confusing. I reached a breaking point. I just couldn't bear the demanding physical training, and then also the presence of a newborn baby being in the house where I lived, and I had to hide the secret. I was not allowed to tell anyone that at 13 I'd had this abortion. So desperate for relief, I confided in a coach that I actually did not know. Somehow in the back of my mind, I just assumed that she wouldn't tell anybody, but she did, and I was promptly sent home and punished for it. Punished for my honesty. So that kind of set the tone for a lot of my life. Desperate, so fast forward to 5 days after my 18th birthday, I gave birth to a baby boy. The arrival of my son, he just filled me with immense joy. And I felt like I had a purpose. I was determined to give him the life and the love that I didn't receive in my own life. But however, the reality of my situation became apparent. The father of my child was a drug addict, and he was also physically and emotionally abusive. When he began a relationship with another girl, I realized with a sinking feeling that I had recreated the toxic environment of my own childhood. Can you even see me behind here? Trying to break up the triggers. Good. So I decided to move 6 hours away to a new city where one of my coaches lived. I thought that the change of location would solve my problems. During this period, I did remain sober. I lived in low-income housing, and I dedicated myself to obtaining the necessary certificates that I needed to teach figure skating. When my son was 18 months old, we were involved in a devastating car accident. At the scene, my son was pronounced dead. But miraculously, in the helicopter, he was resuscitated. Yeah. So he endured a coma and underwent several surgeries before being taken off life support. Against all odds, he did begin to breathe on his own. The prognosis was grim. I was told that if he did live, he would never walk or talk, and that he would be likely confined to a vegetative state. At just 19 years old, I was advised to consider adoption, as it was believed that another family might be better equipped to his needs. This new trauma sent me into a state of paralysis. So up until this point, my trauma had always been kind of fight or flight, and I was always running and trying to find, just moving as fast as I could. But this time, I was sent into a state of just freeze. I found myself unable to speak, trapped in a perpetual state of panic. Despite the overwhelming turmoil within me, whenever medical personnel asked how I was holding up, I would put on my I'm okay face and pretend that I was fine. I was not okay, but nobody seemed to notice. As I transitioned from sleeping at the hospital to returning home, the nightmares of my childhood returned with a vengeance. At night, I would find myself plummeting off a cliff, hurtling towards the ground, only to awaken with the terrifying thought that my son had passed away. This relentless cycle of sleep deprivation and adrenaline left me desperate for relief once again. I decided this time that money held the key to solving all my problems. I believed that financial stability would demonstrate my ability to care for my son, and not for an adoptive family. Within just a year of the accident, I found the world of nightclubs. At first, I loved the scene and everything that came with it, especially the money. I justified my lifestyle by being able to afford a nanny who was also a nurse. Everything looked good on the surface. I was continuing the cycle in childhood that I had learned. I had a nice house, nice car, nice clothes, but I was completely spinning out of control at this point. The drugs were harder and became now a daily habit. I began dating a nightclub owner who also sold drugs, and he encouraged me to sell drugs on his behalf. So I had an endless supply, and then I started doing my own supply and his supply. Once he caught on to what I was doing, he punished me secretly by giving me meth instead of cocaine. And that took me to a very, very dark place. So I decided another geographical change would solve my problems. And so one night, without telling anyone, I packed up my son and we moved. I thought that if I could just go somewhere where nobody knew me, I could stop the dysfunctional cycle. After staying in several cities for short periods of time, we ended up here in Edmonton. I had not finished high school, and was now way too far disconnected from the figure skating world, and I was also too embarrassed to even reach out for help. So once my money ran low, I decided to go back to my old ways and work in a nightclub. I convinced myself that I could simply work on weekends and earn enough money to be able to be a mom during the weekdays. I needed a security clearance to start my new job. So I walked into the police station unknowingly that there had been a warrant out for my arrest. Somehow, I willingly walked in and just handed myself over without knowing. It was very confusing when they took me aside and put me in this small room and started questioning. I was really confused. I had no idea. I was like, I really don't know why I'm here. So that day I could not pick up my now 4-year-old son from daycare. As I was waiting to be released, a man in a waiting room started talking to me. I pretended that I was there for a completely different reason. I fed him a story of a perfect life, but he actually saw right through me. He was not fooled by any of my story. As I was waiting, upon release, he gave me his phone number and told me that when I had had enough, he would send a woman to come help me. I threw that piece of paper with his phone number in the back of my car, but within a few weeks, I was high again. This time, I faced losing my son, so I tore my car apart looking for that piece of paper with the number on it and made the call. As promised, a woman came to pick me up, and she took me to my first Cocaine Anonymous meeting. So, I got 5 minutes. Look at me go.
Go, girl! Still got it.
Woo. It's been 5 years, actually, since I've been on a stage and spoke, so yeah. So the meeting was inside a church, which I thought was extremely odd. Isn't church for, like, good, boring people? My best thinking told me I definitely did not belong in this room. But I started attending meetings. I didn't exactly listen, but I was attending. And without the drugs and alcohol, my skin crawled. I had a low-grade anxiety that followed me everywhere. I quickly found new ways to numb: sugar, exercise, and unhealthy relationships. But those ways of numbing quickly did not work. I relapsed again. This relapse, though, took me to my darkest place I think I've ever been, and I decided to do step one and surrender. I surrendered by calling the woman from the meetings and asked her to be my sponsor. That same night, my sponsor read step 2 with me. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves will restore us to sanity, that God can and will restore you to sanity. I had no concept of a God. I was not raised to believe in a God, and not once had I ever considered that a God could save me, never mind restore me. Like, I was a mess. So my sponsor read me the Serenity Prayer, and after we got off the phone, while I was still shaking and sweating and desperate for the relief that a drug would bring, I prayed. I asked God to help me, and for the first time in my life, I sensed stillness. My chest seemed to open up, and I could breathe. I didn't even know how heavy the weight on my chest was. I think my body actually relaxed for the first time in my entire life. So that night over 20 years definitely changed the trajectory of my life and set me on a new path. With the unwavering support of God and the recovery community, I've found strength to confront and repair the wreckage of my past. And in doing so, I've come to firmly believe that no matter our past mistakes or struggles, we all possess the capacity for recovery and liberation. There's this song I listen to often, and the lyrics, they say, "How can it be that you were broken, but in a second love was resurrected?" As I reflect, that is exactly what happened in my life. So, thank you.